Hog Sty.
And welcome back to another episode of the Hog Sty. It is the final episode of the 2020 offseason, such as it was. I am Steve Thomas. Alex is not here today, so our regular host is out. But we do have Jamal and we have Rob Henson, as always. How are you two guys doing today?
I'm good on my end. I think I told you what's on my plate this week is doing some researching for a friend's wedding. I think that's going to consume my time. I have a speech, by the way, for those who are not aware. I've never given a best man speech, so I got to make sure that thing is good on my end. But outside of that, I'm doing just fine.
No pressure.
Yeah, exactly. No pressure.
Just be funny. That's all. Above all else, be funny.
Be funny, speak confidently, and don't have more than one drink. So there we go.
And be short. Don't bore people. Be short. Yeah. Speaking of short, this is going to be a fairly short show because we're transitioning to our regular season schedule. For those of you who are new to the Hog Sty, we will, starting this week, which is week 1, we will have a game preview that comes out on Thursday morning, and then our traditional game recap that goes up Sunday night. And also, as a Hog Sty note, Seasons of Discontent will return this week with, that is Rick Snyder's look on all things Washington, D.C. sports and life. So look for that. So what we're going to do here today is we're going to go over the Redskins roster cuts that just came out. As we're recording this, we do not have the practice squad announcement yet, but we can probably guess half of them, I would say, off the top of our heads. And then we're going to do our season predictions and then call it a show. So let's jump right into roster cuts here. So just as a general overview, before we get into the details, what did you think about what Washington did with their roster cuts this year?
Oh, yeah, I was about to say, go ahead, Rob. I'm giving them the first go.
Well, I thought it was interesting. Obviously, we're so used to everybody being in camp and being on top of these things and giving their take on what they saw. I got all my cuts via social media, which was a new experience for me. But I was surprised at how many offensive linemen were kept. That would probably be my biggest shock from the cuts.
I think that tells me that they're nervous about their offensive line. That's what it tells me.
Yeah, that and the Adrian Peterson news was very shocking to me.
Can we just start there? Adrian Peterson. Personally, I disagree with it, with what they did. Look, I mean, I'd love to think that Peyton Barber and Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissick and Bryce Love are wonderful and work out, and hopefully they do, but none of these guys are proven at all. Zero. Really, truly proven. So the idea of giving away a Hall of Famer who probably has another year left in him, I didn't really get it. I mean, I get it, I guess, from a offensive play style perspective, but at the end of the day, you need a dude who's guaranteed to get 4 yards. And I just don't know what they've done to make us think that is going to happen necessarily this year.
Here's the one thing that move said to me is that there's an obvious scheme change. Obviously, we got a new offensive coordinator, but I just think at the end of the day, they didn't feel like he would fit exactly what they were trying to do. He's more of a downhill runner. He's never been much of a gun runner, and I think that he doesn't fit that Christian McCaffrey type of mold that Turner's apparently just hanging on to and out for. So I think they kind of did him a favor, and in releasing him, knowing that he wasn't going to get many touches, given what Gibson did in camp apparently.
And he's already picked up by the Lions, I guess, just this morning as we record this. Yeah, I guess you're right. That's clearly it's a scheme change, but I just think they're gambling a lot on a bunch of dudes who none of whom have proven a whole lot at the end of the day. I know I saw you. I'm sorry, Jamal, but I know you posted on social media a couple. Rob, you were advocating for Leonard Fournette and Alvin Kamara, and I get it. Of course, Redskins fans, being Redskins fans, gave a lot of hate to that. It's just a lot of faith And I wouldn't mind them picking up a vet like that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's exactly what I was going towards when I said that, was that Gibson is unproven. Camp is one thing. We didn't have preseason games for him to showcase exactly what he could do against a number one defense. Doing it against our defense is still a feat in itself, but just going off camp footage, I'm always going to lean towards the guys who have experience and have proven that they can produce.
Yeah, and Steve said pretty much a good portion of how I feel about it. I didn't necessarily I didn't agree with the decision, but I understood it. And the one thing that I say when it comes to that is more so like you better hope that this works out because, and I think it will. I don't know how long it'll take, but I think it does end up working out based on their scheme. But at the same time, like when you're looking for a guy who can tote the rock and also be a playmaker when the offensive line isn't necessarily up to par, that's what Adrian Peterson was for the last 2 years. And we had a situation last year where I understand the situations were a little bit different, but you can also use them as comparison sakes. But when you completely made Peterson inactive, you didn't have a run game. And Geis was there, and like the purpose was, Geis can do a lot more in terms of being a more versatile back than what Peterson was, but you just didn't have a run game at all. So if you're going to use these running backs as someone who can also make plays in the pass game and the run game, but also give the defense, the defense will be left guessing. It's just like you don't necessarily know what they can bring. It's because they're unproven. And I understood what I didn't know that you were advocating for Kamara and Fournette, but that's what they give you. Like what they can do in both the ground and pass game. So it's a little. I just hope it works out. I just put it that way.
I wasn't a huge fan of Fournette necessarily, just because he was a bit of a head case and an attitude problem, and I don't like guys like that. But certainly from a skill perspective, yeah, absolutely. Of course, he's a downhill guy. I guess this move to me says, number one, Bryce Love is farther along than maybe we thought. Because of any of these guys, I guess Barber and Love would be the two guys that can go between the tackles, hypothetically at least. Gosh, all we can do is hope it works out, I guess. And the offensive line is the other thing. They kept, as you mentioned, Rob, they kept 10 offensive linemen, and to me, what was more interesting is who they kept more so than who they released. They released waived Paul Adams, Timon Paris, David Steinmetz, moved Mike Ledecky to injured reserve. None of those moves surprised me particularly. But number one, Sadiq Charles did not get put on IR. And number two, it looks like, I guess, Jerron Christian is the left tackle. That scares me a lot. Yeah, especially with a rookie, the second-year quarterback. That's frightening.
And then you trade for a guy who's like, I wouldn't even trade for him. Like, I don't understand why. I guess they didn't want to compete with other teams in signing him. But David Sharp, I think they plugged him into that left guard position.
Okay. I didn't know.
I believe he's plugged him. Yeah, they plugged him into the left guard position. So he's going to be a day one starter, which I haven't seen much of him. But just the fear of the unknowns up front, or what scares me for Haskins' sake and his development.
Yeah, downright frightening, for sure.
Well, one thing's for sure though, Steve. Like we knew that this offensive line was gonna be bad anyway. Like that's just one thing we knew. The development part with Haskins, I agree. I do not want it to hinder it like significantly. I don't want it to hinder it at all. Like you hope that this is one of the things where you knew going in that playmakers was going to have to do their, obviously step up and help Haskins out, but also the team. This is one of the aspects where you hope that the team goes as far as Haskins takes him, because he's going to be out there, be one of the top playmakers on the team as well. And I don't have any faith in the offensive line, but it's not. I just don't think it's going to be too daunting of a task, but it's going to be a challenge for sure.
What happened to Cornelius Lucas? I mean, this is the guy's the vet. He's played before. He's started. I'm not saying he's Trent Williams, but I mean, he got beat out by Christian, and Christian, as we know, has shown nothing. Now maybe who knows? Maybe Jerron Christian.
I'm about to say, as far as
maybe
we know,
improved.
Right. Unfortunately, we had no access to camp, so we can only go off the word of the reporters and coaches.
But we've heard like nothing from anybody about Cornelius Lucas all off season.
It's the same thing that got Sean Davis cut. Like, you ain't hearing nothing, but
we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Okay, so offensive line. The other thing I think maybe that's interesting about is that Keith Ismail actually made the roster over Ross Piersbacher. Because they cut Piersbacher to bring in this year's rookie. I watched his college film. Looked more like sort of a zone scheme guy to me, maybe. But beyond that, it's so hard to even talk about this right now when we haven't seen him. Any other thoughts, O-line?
No, nothing in particular. Like we this is something that the left side was always going to be a. Well, actually, now that I think about it, because the rosters aren't really settled until Wednesday. So is there like a possibility that they can still bring somebody in based on the remaining cuts? Well, I think the cut down day was yesterday, so there's a possibility.
Well, there's a bunch of guys on waiver that they could have made a waiver claim on.
Okay. Yeah, I guess we can wait it out a bit, but I don't know. That left side is going to be a little sketchy.
Well, one thing, just piggybacking off what you said, Jamal, we had questions about the left side going in. Well, most people had questions about the left side going in. I had questions about the left and right side going in as far as the tackle position, because Morgan Moses the last couple of years has not been what he was before the contract extension. So I got questions about both sides. If we can get a better Morgan Moses this year, then I think that helps solidify that line a little more. But going into the offseason after this season, I'm looking to replace both sides. I'm looking to upgrade both sides.
I was a little bit surprised that they didn't try to draft a tackle.
Yeah, the only thing,
another tackle.
The only giving on that offensive line to me is I like Roulier's game and Sheriff. That's it. Everybody else is replaceable, if I'm being honest.
Well, and guess what? Chase Roulier's contract is up at the end of the year too. So I'd like to see if they sign him to an extension, or they think somebody like Keith Ismail maybe can move over to center. He played center in college, so I think it's a big year for Chase, for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of frightening to think that Morgan Moses is the stability at offensive line, now. Okay, so let's move to wide receiver. Let's stick to offense, move to wide receiver, because they did some weird, interesting stuff here too. They cut Trey Quinn. That's not a surprise. Cut Jester Weed, moved Jordan Veazey to IR. Jonathan Johnson got cut. That's not a surprise. Tony Brown. The surprise to me was that Isaiah Wright made the roster. This is Alex's college. Alex called this. He's a Temple guy. He must have shown a lot in preseason to actually have an undrafted free agent like that make the roster in a season like this.
Yeah, this is hard. I think we spoke on this. I don't know how many weeks back, but we spoke on this. Like, this is the year where it's going to be extra hard for undrafted free agents to even make the team. Because that's where the preseason, that's what they're primarily for, is for the back end of the roster. The front half is already decided by the coaches, unless there's a person that tremendously stands out and is probably cheaper than a veteran. I don't know. But yeah, Isaiah Wright, I still to this point I have not watched him, so I don't know what he looks like. But I mean,
I don't even think I'd recognize him if he walked into my kitchen. I don't think I'd know who he is.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and lie. I'll be exposed to him when the season starts, and that's perfectly fine with me. But according to the people who've seen him and know him, or known him in his college days, it is what it is. I'm looking forward to seeing him play and the role that he's going to have so early on in the season. Understand that we only have 5 receivers that are currently on the roster. That's not on IR or anything like that. I'll be interested to see what his role is.
Well, my first thought goes to who else is out there on the free agent market? Because given these 5 guys, there's only 2 that I really am confident in and would throw the ball to if I'm Haskins. And obviously, you got to give young guys a chance to make plays and a chance to get out there and do their thing. Gandy Golden, we all know his issue coming in was getting off the press. I'm anxious to see if he's addressed that in the offseason. Apparently, he was working with Santana to address that issue. Dontrell Inman, a big body receiver, can create a little separation, not overly fast, more of a possession guy. Isaiah Wright, I have no freaking clue who the hell he is. So I mean, I'm just looking at this. Looking at this, I'm anxious to see who plays the Z or who's and.
Doesn't it have to be Inman by default?
I think it does by default, given his body type. And then you put Sims in the slot. But again, we just don't know where Gandy Golden is going to fit. His body type would command that Z position. We anxious to see what Isaiah Wright can do, but I'm not overly excited about this receiving core. I
agree.
McLaurin is the only one. I'm anxious to see if McLaurin can take that next step and become a Pro Bowler. I really think he has the ability to do so. But given that offensive line, he's going to be the only guy that's going to be open before everything goes to hell. I don't have a lot of faith in this receiving core. So I'm working the waiver wire right now. If I'm over there, I'm looking at who's available, who's probably up for trade. People have bitched about me saying this, but I mean, I don't know what the Antonio Brown situation is. If it's half a season, if it's 3 games, listen. I would go and see what he's talking about. I would.
My problem again is that he's a mental train wreck. I don't like guys like that on the roster.
Listen, he knows that this is probably his last opportunity to make some money. And guys in those positions, they either, as my grandfather used to say, you barbecue or you mildew. Which one are you going to do? You going to just sit there and mildew, or you going to make something happen and go barbecue? So I think he could be a target for them if Ron Rivera's on board, which doesn't seem like he is. But if it was me, I would go that route and see.
I hear you. I don't think Ron Rivera suffers fools lightly is the thing, So that may be the case. But listen, if anyone out there can think of a less threatening wide receiver core in the NFL than this, let me know.
They was ranked 32nd for a reason. I agree with both of y'all.
And as much as we like Antonio Gandy Golden, let's also not that you two guys are, but for the fans out there, listen, this is a rookie from Liberty, okay? It's tough enough for receivers from big-time Division I programs to adjust to the NFL. You have a whole slew of them who didn't do well in their first year. Now you're talking about having him make a big jump and be a contributor. I don't know if he can in the first year. Just by history says it's going to be tough. So you're down to 3 guys that are proven, and 2 of those guys aren't very proven. Very tough.
I think people saw AGG moss the high schooler in the back of the end zone in the Dwayne Haskins workout and figured he was going to be the number two starter or something like that.
That's my biggest problem with this fan base sometimes, man.
Yeah, it was crazy, but I do think we all fall victim to it in some way. That is not necessarily relating to this guy specifically, but for me personally, I did think AGG would play a bigger role heading into training camp. And then, hearing the people who are there and just understanding that, he was one who had, I wouldn't say struggles, but he just wasn't mentioned a lot as a person who stood out. And you want to hear that in terms of a person who can possibly have a significant role in the season. So when that's not happening, you understand that he's not where you, me personally, when I say you, I'm saying myself, like he's not where you expected him to be at the start of the season. So maybe you had your expectations a little bit too high for a person who is coming out of Liberty, who is a 4th round pick. And you just need to let it play out by itself and let him continue to develop as the season goes on. So I'm not expecting much from him at this point, just as these 2 weeks has transpired. But it is weird. Like that's just something that people fall victim to plenty often.
Yeah, I mean, and Rob alluded to this earlier. He does, his problem is he doesn't have a ton of burst. And what does the NFL do well? Press, and so I think he's going to have a hard time separating, in the NFL, and he's just going to have to learn how to do it. So tight end. Now it's not surprising at all that they ended up with Logan Thomas and Jeremy Sprinkle. They cut. Hale Hentages and Richard Rodgers. I don't think I heard the name Richard Rodgers one time the entire preseason at all. Hale Hentages is a bit surprising. It wouldn't surprise me if he didn't end up on the practice squad. Clearly, Logan Thomas is going to be the starter here. Marcus Ball, I would assume, is going to be the fullback probably. Why not? Why not?
What the hell do people see in Logan Thomas that I'm missing?
I see a contract that's worth $6.15 million. That's what I see.
Why? What, man? Listen.
It's like you have your new car, you want to drive it. That's the only. I get it. He's very inexperienced. He's average. I did a deep dive into his film this week, and what I saw was a guy who's a decent, good but not great blocker, and an undeveloped route runner. With decent hands. That's what I saw. But I don't know. Yeah, and they gave him $6 million. So to me, it's by default.
You know what, boys? I'm giving up this job. I'm going back. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to play tight end for the Washington football team. Man. I can definitely block better. I'm an unproven route runner, so give me $6 million.
I mean, it is crazy, but I think that's a testament to how bad the group is in general. Like Jeremy Sprinkle he's a third stringer on any roster. He can do the minimum. Like he could give you about 10 snaps on offense, the rest on special teams, and that works. Marcus Ball, we don't know who he is because he can't stay healthy, and that's not like an insult, but it's like he's literally, since he's been in the league, he has not played. But he was with the Panthers last year, so obviously it's easy for him to get a shot here, and he's made the most of it in training camp. And then you get to Logan Thomas, as we were just talking about. Nobody, like he's what was it, like 20 catches last year? I don't. Yeah. It's just it doesn't, like, it just shows how bad that group is as well. It's just as bad as the offensive line. But you're hoping that he can give you. Look, I'll put it this way. I'll be positive because I understand and I don't disagree with anything that you guys said. I'll just be positive this way. If he can give you about 45 catches this year, you're in good shape. If he give you 45 catches. Just leave it at that.
And just for the uninitiated, in case people don't understand this, if you're not college football fans, Logan Thomas was a quarterback up until four years ago, okay? He was a quarterback at Virginia Tech. Didn't work out in the NFL, so he just transitioned when he went to the Lions to be a tight end. And so he's new to the position. Look, it's funny because when I do my film studies, I usually have a whole bunch of plays to pick from, a whole bunch of catches to kind of demonstrate a player's abilities, and it wasn't that big of a challenge to do that because there were only 6 catches in the 3 games I watched. So, they all went up there. So, look, disaster area, tight end disaster area. There's no doubt about that.
I mean, if we tanking, just say we tanking. Like, let's just do it. Just come out and say it. Tell us now that we tanking, and don't try to convince us that Logan Thomas is the next Darren Waller. Don't do that to me. It's disrespectful to my knowledge of football and to everybody's fandom. It's just ridiculous. I don't understand it. I mean, why not try to develop a guy? I mean, they got rid of Moss's kid pretty quick. I mean, I'm not an advocate for him. He was really rough around the edges. Maybe they practice squad him. But, that position is to be determined. Don't insult me with a $6 million contract for Logan Thomas and tell us everything's okay and he can do it. And I don't understand that. It's not happening. Go out and get and trade for one of these guys that you sent. You sent a 6th-round pick for David Sharp. You could probably send the same thing, or if not less, for a Jake Butt or somebody like that, who's at least we know can block.
They could have found a league average starter out there for a
that's
5th-round pick or something.
You
flirted with Njoku. Yeah, you flirted with Njoku. The Browns kept 4 tight ends. They're like. Go see what one of those guys is. Like, come on, man. It's disrespectful. It's disrespectful.
Yeah. All right. Last.
But also,
group
one
of
second,
the,
Steve, because I think this is
yeah.
what I don't know if I said it on the show or before the show, but this is one of the things where we were talking about, where I had mentioned like this is some things where you can give Rivera, if you're a fan of the team or if you're a person who's following them closely, you can believe or give Rivera a chance to let him do his thing, but that doesn't always mean that you agree with every decision he makes. And I think this is one of those instances where it's like when it comes to the tight end position or the receiver position, or even the running back position, what we were just speaking on, it's like you don't necessarily have to agree with everything. And one of those options, like we just talked about, we don't have nobody at tight end. We really don't. And you hope to be surprised, but the odds are, based on past production, you're gonna get what you get. Like you know what you're getting into when you keep these guys on your roster.
Yeah, I mean they did try to get Greg Olsen, and but what was odd is when that didn't work out, so they dipped all the way down to the Detroit Lions third string tight end and turned him into a high paid starter.
I got one for you. Philly just cut Caleb Wilson.
Oh yeah, I like him. That's the dude out of Florida, right?
Caleb Wilson. No, he's out of UCLA.
Oh shoot, who am I thinking of?
Fast.
He was on the Redskins roster for 5 minutes at one point
he
too,
was.
wasn't he?
Yep.
Yeah.
I like this game in college. I ain't saying he the truth, anything like that, but I would prefer him over somebody like your boy Thomas. I'm sorry,
he was on the team. Okay.
I'm not. This ain't happening.
Well, we'll see. We've got three unproven. Basically, every one of the ball-touching groups on this team are completely
in flux,
unproven. In flux, yeah. Now, quarterback. Interestingly enough, amazingly enough, Alex Smith made the roster. I don't know if he's the backup or the third stringer, but I guess one thing, and I'm glad to see him make it. I'm glad that the team was clearly stated. Dwayne Haskins is a starter. 2 weeks ago? Very good for his psyche. Very good for the team. You are the man. There is nobody breathing down your neck. We're not going to throw Alex Smith in week 3. So that part is good. So I hope they put Steven Montez on the practice squad. I watched his college film. I think he can play. He's a good quarterback. They need to keep. I think they probably intended to keep him around, but Alex Smith was a wild card.
No, I think Alex Smith's contract made him. Definitely savable. Help that decision to keep him.
Cutting him would have cost the team $9 million.
I would have cost him $9 million. Oh my goodness, how much would they have saved?
His dead cap, they wouldn't have saved anything. They would have lost $9 million. He's got a $32 million dead cap hit this year, so it was a $21 million cap hit.
Oh,
so.
yeah, all right, there you go. I got you.
I said it. So actually, it's $11 million, not 10 or not 9. $11 million.
Well, one thing's for sure. I can't remember who asked, but somebody asked like if Alex Smith was to play in week 1, for whatever reason, or if he was required to play in week 1, will he be ready to play or something like that? Yeah, they asked Coach Rivera this after the roster cuts, and he said absolutely. So, I guess that's just a testament to him. Because if you're gonna keep him on the active roster, then obviously he has something. It's not a for show type of thing. It's for real.
I'm not.
Yeah,
if I'm watching, I'm not ever putting him back.
I don't want to either. I don't. I hope he's.
But listen, it's a great sentimental story and all that, and he's a good guy and family good dude and all of that. But if you're gonna have him on the active roster, he needs to be ready to play. I'm sorry, he could have made a choice and asked them to put him on PUP. Maybe who knows. But if he's on the active roster, I would not hesitate to play him. Otherwise there's no point in having him on the active roster.
The last thing you want is another disaster where we thought that leg was fine and then something happens. No.
Well, shoot.
Right now it looks like a bendy straw, and and he's cleared. I don't understand it. I would never put him back on the field, and that's out of respect to him and what he's done in the NFL.
Now that I think about it,
even if he came to you and said, "I want to play, coach,"
I don't care. I don't care. Help us with the young guys, please, Alex. We gonna keep this salary, and you're gonna help us with the young guys. You're gonna be the highest paid third string quarterback in the league. Just do your job, bro. Cause I'm not doing it. Because if they put him, it's a bad PR move. If they put him back out there and he gets hurt, it's bad PR, more bad PR for the Redskins. For for the Washington football team, and it's only going. I mean, he may lose that leg this time, man. Just sit this one out, brother. We appreciate the story. It was a feel good story. Most respect to you. Just I don't want to see him go out any other way than on his feet.
And most people probably feel like that, I would assume. Okay, defense.
Yes.
Defensive line. Let's go right to the defensive line. First of all, the moves they make, just to be clear here, they cut Jordan Brailford. I would assume he's a practice squad candidate. David Bada was the international guy. Didn't hear from him all offseason. He's gone. And who else? We've got Nate Orchard, also gone. So what are our thoughts about this defensive line group, guys?
The stalwarts, the proven, the heart and lifeblood of this football team, the unquestioned leaders of this football team. I am highest on this position group than any other position group on this team. We know what we're going to get from them. We know it's going to be max effort, balls to the wall, and there's going to be a lot of production from that group. I'm excited to see what they do this season. I'm excited to see the rotation. Obviously one of these guys we got to sit out, and they both can't. All three of them can't start a defensive tackle. So I'm interested to see who's going to be 3 technique and the 5.
Well, the other case is who are the 2 ends going to be too.
Oh,
one of the 3 of them are going to lose playing time. Between Kerrigan, Sweat, and Young, somebody's not going to lose some playing time. They're all going to be in there, but
I will say this: I was surprised that they kept Ryan Anderson.
I was too.
I was really surprised. James Smith Williams kid, I don't know what the hell we getting out of him. I don't have much hope there, but
well, I'll tell you one thing. I did read. Speaking of James Smith Williams, I think it was Jack Del Rio commented on him and said he can play. He's very versatile. Said he can play the 1, the 3, the 5, the 9, and so they may look at him as a guy who's sort of the swing tackle, if you will, of the defensive line.
I like that.
Yeah.
The more you can do.
Yeah, exactly. So the big look. First of all, this group underperformed last year. They had a bunch of number 1 draft picks, and they were the worst or second worst run defense in the league. So they have no excuse for not making a massive improvement to me out of this group. So
that's not entirely on them, but I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, and we've talked about that before. So yeah, I think the interesting thing here is they have a playtime problem in a good way here. Who's going to play and who's not going to play? A bunch of highly paid number 1 draft picks. Well, some of them are going to.
Well, let me ask Rob this question, because I know when it comes to running backs, you need a rhythm type of deal in terms of your playing time. You want to make sure you get enough touches so you don't just go cold, so to speak. Like, in your opinion, when it comes to the front 7 and the defensive line, like, you have so many people here. And then you got the people that you don't know of, like James Smith Williams. I don't know him either. And then Ryan B apparently made the roster as well. Oh wait, Steve, did he make the roster? Ryan B?
No. I'm sorry, I left him out. Yeah, no, Ryan B went to IR.
IR.
Sorry,
okay,
I left him
I
out.
was looking at our roster on the site. So, but basically, my question is more so like how often do these rotations need to happen? So these guys just won't go cold, because there is going to be a lot of people that's going to be on this defensive line that needs to get some snaps and keep these teams fresh, but they're also all really good. A majority of them is really good.
Well, I will say this: that from the coach's perspective, in the interior of the defensive line, they rotate as need be. So whoever starts the game, let's say Payne and Allen start the game. They 6 plays into a defensive drive, and Payne taps his helmet, he's coming out. You leave it up to those guys at that point. Those front interior linemen, you leave it up to those guys on the rotation. As far as defensive end, you got to go with the hot hand, and it's more of a rhythm thing. And you look at the matchups. Let's say you got more of a bulldozing left tackle. Kind of sleuth-footed a little bit. You might want to go with the speed or the younger guys. So I think you're going to see that rotation change depending on who they're playing, as to who starts or how many snaps each guy gets. But to answer your question, from a rotational standpoint, it is hard to get into a rhythm when you're coming out every 2 or 3 plays. I did it at TCU for the first 3 years of my career, and it was terrible because I'd make two great plays, and then I got to go out the game because we had 3 good linebackers who all made it to the NFL. But it sucks because you're like, I could have done more, or I was on a roll, and then you get back in the game on the next drive or the next series, and it's like starting from scratch. You're starting the game all over again. So it does take a toll on you mentally, and it does hinder your production.
Well, I'll tell you what. I think one of Payne and Allen is not going to be on this team in a year. They're going to sign somewhere else. Somebody's going to get traded because it's just a lot of resources to have highly paid people sitting on the bench.
I think Matt's going to be the odd man out. I hate to say it.
Maybe him. Yeah.
He only signed a 3-year extension though, right? So I think that's very
He's
plausible.
Through 2022.
Yeah, so he'll be out here soon. He could be.
And the other guy is Ryan Anderson
he could be out
too.
here soon.
I mean, what are they going to do with Ryan Anderson? I don't see him as a 4-3 defensive end. I'm sorry. I guess I trust Jack Del Rio more than I do myself, but I don't really get it.
I think one of the things, I think one of the things that fooled a lot of, I'm not gonna say us public people, but the reporters, was that they were diving too deep into what the coaches were saying about Ryan Anderson, because they did speak highly of him, but they thought it was more so a chess piece or chess type move because they wanted to try and trade him. But I think they were really high on Ryan Anderson because a lot of things that he can do, like he can move around in plenty of places. And there is a narrative, and although I don't disagree because it does make sense. The narrative is like we don't know, like he's a tweener, so we don't know exactly what he can do. But if they can utilize him in a particular way throughout that front seven, then maybe we've been what's the guy's name? I can't remember his name that I was thinking of. But if they can utilize him the right way, then maybe he is better than we expected, and he can be better than we expected.
Arizona kind of does the same thing, or did the same thing when they drafted Hassan Reddick out of Temple.
Good call out.
But he's way more athletic, and I would say more of a speed rusher. So.
Okay, folks, this is Steve Thomas. I'm coming in here with a post-show insertion. Right at this point, right after I introduced the linebacker group, we had multiple technical failures. And as a result, the audio is really hard to hear from this point forward, in particular Rob and Jamal's tracks. So ordinarily, we'd probably just edit the whole thing out and cut the show. But Rob had a lot of really great stuff to say. Particularly, obviously, about the linebacker. So I'm going to leave that in. Turn your audio up as far as it can go when Rob is talking. And once we get through that, we're going to cut out the whole discussion we had that we talked about in the beginning of the show about predicting the season. And I'm just going to come back in here and summarize what we all did. So thanks for putting up with this. And go ahead and listen to the rest. All right. Well, that is defensive line, and personally, I think Ryan Anderson's trade bait. But what do I know? Okay, so let's move on to linebacker because this is a more interesting group to me, and fortunately, we have an expert here. So what they did at linebacker was move Reuben Foster to IR, cut Donald Payne, and they cut Donald Payne, move Reuben Foster to IR. So let's just get right to you, Rob. What do you think about this linebacker group as a whole? Yeah, I mean, what I read is that the coaches felt like he hadn't made quite as much progress as they had hoped physically. So maybe he's a guy that they'll bring back after 3 weeks. I don't know if they designated him to return or not. Here's my big question, though, Rob. Um, it seems to me we know who the middle linebackers are. You've got John Bostic, got Sean Dan Hamilton. It seems like we've got four weak side linebackers, you know, and I don't know who the Sam is out of this group. I don't know if Cole Holcomb is, and even Kevin Pierre-Louis, I guess, is it by default, but he's been more of a weak side guy too. So what do you do? Yeah. Right. See, this is what you need to re-sign up. You need to suit up for, Rob. Forget tight end. So who's the weak side starter here? We've got Bostic as a starter. Holcomb, not over Thomas Davis. Or or do you think Davis is going to be the Sam? Yeah, Jay, you got any thoughts before we move on to the secondary?
Nah, only cause I would be driving myself crazy with how the setup would be. I don't know anything with this group. But I don't. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I feel like they just do have the driving point, or more so the CB will probably be like the strong side. I don't know who's gonna be over there, given that you have so many options on, like, just in the group in particular. So I'll just leave it at that.
The only thing I'll point out is Khalil Hudson. They gave him number 47. Makes me wonder if he's not going to be more of sort of the Landon Collins, that New York Giants kind of role than a true linebacker. Almost strong in the box, kind of strong safety. Makes me wonder. Maybe I'm reading into it way too much. Um, so secondary, you know, here's the disaster zone to me. First of all, what they did here, they cut Aaron Colvin. A little bit of a surprise. Cut Sean Davis, big surprise. Ryan Lewis got cut, and Simeon Thomas is suspended. Now he's on IR. So who they're left with is Ronald Darby, Kendall Fuller, Danny Johnson, Fabian Moreau, Timmy Moreland, Greg Stroman at the corners, Troy Apke, Landon Collins, Cameron Curl, and DeShazer Everett at safety. Now, guys, I don't know about you, but this group scares the hell out of me. Thoughts? Yeah. Yeah, he ended up on the practice squad. I don't either. I don't either. He's my biggest disappointment of that draft. I thought he was gonna, do wonders. Right, right. You're talking Fabian. His college film was great. He was a number one outside boundary corner. Yeah, I thought he was going to be great. Yeah. Yeah. Jay, you got thoughts? Jay, you got
I would say probably that transition to slot probably messed him up a little bit. But I don't know. I think that I actually think the opposite of you, Steve. I don't think it's going to be necessarily a bad position group. I think the issue is, I'm sorry, cornerbacks. I think the question mark comes at the safety position and Troy Apke, so to speak, because I think while he had played well in training camp and obviously earned himself a starting role based on his play being better than Sean Davis, I feel like when it comes to the regular season and the bullets are flying, I'm not necessarily sure how he'll be able to respond on a consistent basis. You hope the chemistry is there, and I think that his improvement obviously is enough for the coaches to warrant him starting. But I don't know like how you'll be able to consistently keep that up on a 16 game basis, and that's where my concern is. The only thing that I can go off with Apke is last year in the preseason where he was always off by a tad bit. He was always off by a tad bit. And that's, I don't know like what it points to specifically, but we do know like being late is never a good thing, obviously. So that's where my concern lies. I think the cornerbacks are going to be doing just fine. I like the position that Darby is in because Darby can play a little bit more aggressive than what he used to be in Philly, and like him being aggressive and up close into a receiver's face is something that I think was a benefit for him. So you hope things work out, but that's where I'm at with the cornerbacks. It's fine, but the safety position is where I'm a little sketchy.
Yeah, Rob, thoughts on Troy Apke because he's obviously the sort of the shock of the preseason. I think as a team.
They say you know what you're getting out of a player, and that your player truly reaches his full potential when they hit 33. So, kind of a late bloomer, but I think he has everything. It's just going to be between the ears for Troy Apke, in my opinion. He came on in relief of, I can't remember who it was last year, but
What what would have been Monte Nicholson, right?
he got the interception in one game. I can't remember who they were playing.
San Francisco.
He got the interception. I think he had two last year, honestly. But I like his athletic ability. I think for him it's just gonna be between the ears. I don't know what to think of Curl. I mean, obviously we hadn't seen much of him, but maybe those two guys are a little bit more neck and neck than people think. Just because you name starter, don't mean you solidified.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what's great about Troy Apke to me, he's got so much speed, straight line speed. Even if he blows it, he can make up a lot of ground. Now, I'm not making this comparison, so everybody just let me have this. But that's the same kind of thing that Sean Taylor could do. And I'm not saying Troy Apke, Sean Taylor at all. Don't misunderstand me. But Sean Taylor had a lot of speed, or he can make up a lot of ground quickly. And Troy Apke's problem to me is he always takes weird angles, and he doesn't see the play very well. But being way back there in a cover three with a ton of speed, if he gets a little better in his reads, running a 4-3, he can correct for a lot of things. It's what Darryl Green used to do way back in the day. DG could blow it and still catch you. And so that's my hope. What's that?
That is an element to Sean game that he did have. I don't know if I'm comparing him to light on a post and he throw interception get it that way.
Exactly.
So that's the thing. We're gonna be between the ears with Apke. Can you? And the weird angles are moving with him. So whoever's working with him on that, if you can continue to just drill those footwork issues home, and I think he'll be just fine. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he's going to be fine. I think he'll have a solid season. But I'm interested to talk about the best player on this team by far,
Uh
the team MVP, and Tress Way.
oh.
And if you want to say his name, I don't care. Nobody said it. You can add me over there. I don't care. Tress Way is the best player on the
I think he's the best. He's the best punter in the NFL. Some measures, by some measures. Well, he got snubbed because he was on the second worst team in the league. That's why he got snubbed. But he was. But I just did some stats for this coming year, and he was number one in net punting yards in the league. You know. Yeah, I mean, look, there's not much to say about special teams. Obviously, it's Hopkins, Sundberg, and Tress. A big open question as to who returns kicks and punts. We could probably debate that for an hour, but the truth is we have absolutely no idea whatsoever unless, Rob, you have some inside info. Other than that, we'll just have to see who lines up. You know. Yeah, Isaiah Wright returned a lot of punts or kickoffs, I believe. I can't remember kicks or punt. He's a returner, so there's a candidate. Sims is another one, but he's got a big role. Bryce, yeah. Okay, folks, this is Steve again. Like I told you a few minutes ago, I'm going to cut the rest of the show out here about our discussion about the predictions for the season. So I'm just going to summarize what we talked about here in a couple minutes to spare you from having to listen to the rest of that terrible audio. So I predicted a 6-10 season with wins against Cleveland, New York Giants in Week 9, Detroit in Week 10, Cincinnati in Week 11, Carolina in Week 16. Jamal predicted 7-9 with wins against the Eagles in Week 1, Arizona in Week 2, the Rams in Week 5, the New York Giants Week 9, Cincinnati, Dallas Week 12, and then Carolina Week 16. Rob predicted 5-11 with wins against the Rams in Week 5, at the Giants Week 6, at Detroit, Cincinnati, and then at Dallas in Week 12. So that was our prediction for the season. And sorry about all the technical problems, and thank you for listening. And that is it. See you next time.